Hi everyone, it's Laurie. I hope this video finds you all well wherever you are in the world, and I wish you a day of happiness and good health. And I'm really glad to be able to be talking with you again, and glad you're here to watch. So I am trying a new setup for filming. Not terribly new, but I got a new tripod. And it's not actually a tripod. A tripod would have 3 legs, and this is just a clamp with a long arm. And so I'm trying something new. I'm afraid it might be a little shaky. So we'll test it out and we'll see how it goes, if I can keep it clamped to the table or if I need to find something else to do. I decided to put some cards out to just kind of give you a little something to look at. Today is Monday, October 8th, and it's really hot weather where I am right now. I've been doing a lot of weather reports lately on my videos, but it's in the 80s. Oh gosh, I'll try to remember to look up what that is in the rest of the world. But in America, that's very hot weather. That's like, you know, summertime, going to the beach, swimming in the swimming pool. But c'est la vie. So I've got my windows open. I don't have the fan turned on because I don't want to make noise. I guess I'll tell you a little bit about what I've put out here. I just have some cards from the Tree Wisdom Oracle to give you a little something to look at as I'm talking. I decided to bring out this little mini fairy. She's just a fairy from the craft store. I'm not sure why the lighting isn't the best, and I think she's meant to go in one of those tiny fairy gardens, but she looks so sweet there. And my piece of petrified wood. Oh, you can probably hear kids outside. It's a holiday today, and so the children are off school and their neighbor kids are out playing. So what I wanted to talk about today is a new tarot spread. This is a spread that I've actually been thinking about doing for over a year. I think it was the summer of 2017. I came across an article in Tricycle Magazine. That's an online magazine for people who practice Buddhism. And I came across an article by a man named Dawa Tarchin Phillips. And it's about what to do when you don't know what's next. And I liked the article a lot. I printed it off, and I've read it multiple times over the ensuing year or so. And all the time thinking that the precepts the author sets out in the article would make for a very interesting tarot spread. I thought this was probably a good time to be thinking on the issues of what to do that we can practically do in a very practical manner when you simply don't know what to do. You've done all the things already and you don't know what to do. So in my instance, sort of the things I'm thinking about are politics, but you know, not in a way like who is in power or what political party is doing something. I'm interested in politics, but I'm not, you know, particularly obsessed with it or anything. I'm curious, and I try to stay abreast of things. And I don't think the sun rises and sets on politics, but I certainly think our future, the health of the people who live in the world, is definitely at risk. And you know, it's the political situation's important. So I consider it important for me to stay involved, to stay active. I donate money, I vote, I always vote, and I call my representatives, you know, to complain about things, write letters. The last couple of years I've started marching a lot more than I did in the past, and making the effort to show up places, volunteer and things like that. But after I've done those things, and I'm doing all those things, what do I do next? What do I do next? And so I thought it would be good to kind of look at this and see if I could turn this article into a tarot spread. So what I'm going to do is I'm basically going to give you all a rundown of the information that was in the article, and also explain with you about how the tarot spread can go as I go along. I wanted to be looking at what sort of actions might be most helpful for me. So if you want to play along with me, you probably want to get a tarot deck or an oracle deck. I am using the Tarot of the Hidden Realms as my tarot. I wanted a deck that was going to have a very practical, earthy feel so that I could kind of get an idea of very gritty, practical, hands-on, you know, boots on the ground sort of things to do, or even what things I need to do as far as grounding and situating and righting myself in my own life, my own personal grounding, my own personal mental centeredness and that sort of thing. And so I thought Tarot of the Hidden Realms would be an excellent deck for that because it features fairies. That's why I picked this little fairy here in very intimate ways in their day-to-day life, very close up and very intimate. And I feel that it captures sort of a spiritual or magical essence of, you know, humans' day-to-day life and that kind of thing. And it's a gentle deck, but it certainly isn't a nice washed deck or anything like that. So I thought it would be a good one to use. And I also am going to be using the Tree Wisdom cards alongside it as an oracle. Ooh, I just really messed that up. Let's see. Okay, so I'm using the Tree Wisdom as an oracle deck alongside. I'm going to use it to clarify. Excuse me. I'm going to use it to help me clarify whatever meaning might be in the tarot deck, but I think you could also use just an oracle deck alone or just a tarot deck alone, as well as combining some together. I even have some ideas as far as expanding it out into a giant spread with lots and lots of decks. So I'm going to talk about that at the end, kind of little jumping off points, little jumping off ideas and things like that I had as I was putting the spread together. And so if you'd like to play along, you can grab a deck, or if you want to just watch and play along later, you can feel free to do that. Likewise, the other thought I had, that if you just want to watch and participate, so just kind of like sink into the reading and allow yourself to be present for this particular reading and allow this reading to be for you as well. When I drew the cards, I did pick all of the cards ahead of time and I've labeled them. So that's just so that I didn't have to waste time while I was filming on camera choosing cards. But when I drew all these cards, the intention was with asking questions as an answer for me, but as an answer for we. So I was looking for, what do we need to know, the collective we, all of us who are here, both me doing the video and you watching the video. So if you just want to kind of sink into that and take that, you're welcome to do that as well, whatever you like. The thing I really like about these particular cards is that they have let me just grab the deck. They don't have a little white book, they have the write-up on the back. So when you pick a card, you can just flip it over and read the information. I like that. It makes it nice. There are a lot of oracles that I have that have really beautifully in-depth guidebooks, and I like those, particularly when I'm doing personal work that involves a lot of journaling. It's nice to have something very long to sit and read and chew over and take notes on and then journal about. But in this case, I wanted something that would be a relatively quick answer to the questions. And some people don't like that you can see them on the back. So the way I usually do this is whenever I draw the cards, after I've shuffled, if I'm going to pick a card, I will just kind of fan them out like this. And then when I feel like it's the right card to pick, then I'll just pick that card, and I can't see it before I pick it. The other way I might do it after I've shuffled is I might just kind of do, this is Kelly from The Truth and Story, Kelly Fitzgerald, that she just will do a split, kind of key into her feelings and then see where the card needs to split. Oftentimes I'll just kind of just expose the sides and the corners, and then choose the one that I think I might need to see or hear. Unconditional love. We all need to see and hear that. Okay, so I'll clear these away. They were just some pretty cards to look at with a bit of intention setting for this video. The article, the basis for the article by Dawa Tarchin Phillips is that there's so much chaos in the world and we kind of don't necessarily know what to do with it. And he wanted to put forth 8 principles that would help us cultivate a spiritual practice that was kind of geared toward a time of fear, and also times of great opportunity. So because that's exactly what we're in when you're in chaotic times. That is when you have great fear, often danger, combined with great opportunities. And he begins the article by talking about a story. And he tells a story about two next door neighbors. You may have heard this story before, or you may not have. I love the story element in tarot, and I love the story element in life. I've spoken about this before. I am a Reiki Master teacher, and I was in private practice for about 5 years. I'm not currently practicing privately, but I was for quite a long time. And whenever I taught my classes, I usually taught story. I taught around story. You may know also that I was a homeschooling mother for 25 years. Yeah, a really long time, longer than 25 years. And homeschooled 3 children through all of the school. And I really like the Rudolf Steiner Waldorf form of homeschooling. I've talked about that before as well. It's based a lot on the concept of story and bringing the right sort of material or message to the person at the right time, because the right time is every bit as important as, the timing is every bit as important as the material itself. In all those ways that I loved, that I worked with story, and that I enjoyed story, and I used story for teaching or for learning and understanding things, is the idea that story kind of goes in to our consciousness in a way that can often bypass a lot of the barriers that we have in place, a lot of the filters and barriers that we put up every day. A story can speak sort of from one person's soul to another soul, a timeless truth spoken to souls that can get in and get around some of the things that our own minds and our own preconceptions will put walls up or barriers to, or even filters we have that don't belong to us, that are someone else's negative thoughts or things like that. Story can get in a way that kind of runs around. It has a little invisibility cloak, and it can run around a lot of those barriers that we have to get inside us without us really knowing it. And then we're changed by it without necessarily knowing that we were about to be changed. And so those can be very powerful experiences. So he starts by telling a story about 2 neighbors. And both neighbors, they live next door to one another, wanted to plant fruit trees in their gardens. And neighbor number 1 planted her fruit tree right outside her kitchen door. And she watered it, and she protected it from insects and disease, and she fertilized it and gave it lots of sunshine and love and care, because she was very excited at the idea of having this beautiful little pear tree. Let's say it's pears. I quite like pears. Right outside of her kitchen door. And she was very happy because she would be able to open her kitchen door and get as many pears as she wanted, as much as she wanted, just, right outside her home. And neighbor number 2 also decided to plant a pear tree, and she decided to plant it at the end of her front garden, down by the garden gate, down by her front gate. And she did the same thing her neighbor did. She watered the tree, and she fertilized it, and she protected it from pestilence and from disease, and took care of it, waiting and longing and happy in the idea that she would have a tree that gave her pears, all the pears that she wanted, whenever she wanted, down at the bottom of her garden. But she was also really happy and excited about the idea that people passing by, the postman delivering, or post carrier delivering the mail, a neighbor walking down the street, someone going by to catch the bus, children on their way to school, parents walking little babies, and dog owners walking their dogs, would all also get to enjoy the pear tree, because it was down at the front of the house, by the door, not the door, but by the gate, where other people could pass by and enjoy it as well. And his point of the story is that both neighbors had exactly the same work they had to do. They had to do all of the things in order to make the tree grow and then get fruit. But the reach of their actions is completely different. What he means by this story is we're not only living through a transformation of the way that things are done, but also a deeper transformation of perhaps why we're even doing these things in the first place. Are we here to just maximize our own, personal reward? Or are we here to share the fruits of our labor? Because we're doing the same work regardless. And from the perspective that he is giving of a practicing Buddhist, from that practicing perspective, there's a lot of power in intention and how it can shape the moment that we're in, and even how it might shape the future. Because when we approach this moment with a particular focus, whether it's wisdom, whether it's kindness, whether it's a sense of responsibility or whatever, we don't have to worry as much about the future, he says, because that will then tend to take care of itself by giving us what we put in. So, what Dawa Tarchin Phillips does, I'm just going to refer to him by his surname. So what Phillips does then through the article is he gives us 8 principles to help deepen our practice of awakening during anxious times. And we're going to do tarot along with the 8 principles in the article. So principle number 1 is serve the light. What to do when you don't know what to do next. Serve the light. What does he mean by that? He means to be conscious and mindful and to act with wisdom and foresight. And he basically means serving the light means showing up. Just be available, be present. Be present for yourself, be present for your highest good, your best and highest self, being present for others who are in our lives as well. And he does talk about when he showed up once for his nephew who was having a difficult time in school, and his sister asked if Phillips would come and you know, talk to the nephew, and he ended up just sitting for a few hours in the garage with the nephew and listening. He just had to show up. That was what his nephew really needed, to be able to talk in an uninterrupted way and have someone actually hear him, have someone being willing to show up. So serve the light, it means we need to show up. So let's ask, how can I serve the light? So that will be question number 1 for our spread. How can I serve the light? So as I said, I did draw the cards ahead of time. I guess I could even come in a little bit like that. Let's see. Yeah, that works. And so I drew from the Tarot of the Hidden Realm, which I actually keep in this little bag that I made. The fabric, I saw the fabric at the fabric store. It just reminded me a lot of the backs of the cards. I don't have a small box. It just came in a kind of that cereal box type of package, you know, crackers or cereal box. This is a little bit older version of the Tarot of the Hidden Realm, and I edged it in 3 different colors of gold. I thought that would look very nice with the gold bar on the front. So this isn't the newest copy. I think the newest version is thinner cardstock. This cardstock's a bit cardboardy. And but hey ho. So how can I serve the light? How can I serve the light? And oh, the world. Mother Earth. Here we have Gaia herself in all her green nakedness. Isn't that beautiful? Let's take a look at our oracle card to see if we can, you know, use it to kind of give us more information. We got playfulness. Look how interesting this is. Can you see the similarities in their posture? This is a little kind of a tree spirit in the tree with the glasses on. Do you see, like wearing little round glasses and arms up here? Reminds me very much of they're in the same, oops, sorry, there we go. Kind of in the same position. So playfulness, it says, this is the goat willow. When life feels too serious, what you need is to be playful like a child. Remember your original innocence, as it often remains buried under years of conditioning. Delight in the moment by bringing a sense of wonder and play into your day. A natural balance is restored and you feel more wholesome, and people around you will notice and be inspired by you. So I think, you know, how can I serve the light is by being out in the world, bringing that world connection and the happiness and fun and childlike joy that is inherent in the world. Look at the butterflies flying around, and I love the spiral that she has over her heart chakra. She's showing so much love, and it's love that's going in to herself, and it's love that is coming out to us. So I think for us personally, the message of how can we serve the light might be to remember the whole big world. That people, especially those of us in the US that are disturbed at the, several years of ongoing, that we're part of a bigger world. We're part of a world that we can love the people that are in it everywhere. And we can play, because the world is really an amazing, gorgeous place to play. She looks like she's almost just thrown herself down in a bed of leaves. Because the world is a great place. It's kind of neat. So how we serve the light, that's question number 1. Of the 8 principles that Phillips talks about in this article, principle number 2 he calls break the norm. And by break the norm, he doesn't mean go vandalize somebody else's property or do something that's really outside of your comfort zone in a legal or acting out kind of way. What they mean is kind of break the norm of your own internal conditioning. So the fixation and the tightness that binds our opinions, or our righteousness, or our judgment, or our blind criticisms. And breaking with the norm means to be, first off, revolutionary in our own mind. So somebody who breaks down the rigid power structures and our own eco defenses through awareness, mindfulness, compassion, love, and that kind of thing. And he talks about how important it is to bring our limiting beliefs to the surface and to get ourselves out of our comfort zone. So there's an interesting statement in here. He quotes the 37 practices of bodhisattvas, which was written by a 14th century Buddhist master named Gyaltse Togme Zangpo. Apologize for that. But he says, quote, "Give up your homeland. That is the practice of bodhisattvas." And it's because the moment you leave your home base, the place that you're accustomed to, where you feel safe, the circumstances that you're used to, as soon as you leave that, you're in foreign territory. Even if you're, not far from home, it's still foreign to you, right? It's still foreign to me, to us. And it's a lot easier to realize how narrow we are and what narrow-mindedness we're kind of carrying around unacknowledged for ourselves by stepping out of our comfort zone and going into someone else's comfort zone, someone else who isn't us. Yeah, so it's getting out of our comfort zone. So question number 2, I think we should say, how can I break my norm? Because this is about my norm. It's not necessarily rioting or trying to overthrow a government or breaking societal norms, but how do I break my norm? Because I'm the only person I can control right now. I can't control anybody else. Okay, so this is question 2. How can I break my norm? And temperance. So got 2 major arcana cards already, and major arcana cards, I think a lot of us think of them as sort of big life issues. The minor arcana are little issues, the court cards are people issues, the major might be life, big giant issues, but they are also archetypes, so they can also be just a typical, an archetypal. When it gets down to basics, it's sort of like textbook emotions, and those can be big, but they can also be small, inward, also outward. The idea is that they're sort of universal emotions, and what's interesting is there's a point where we're going to be talking about universal knowledge a few questions down. So this feels like it's a good reading, it feels like it's right on. Okay, so we're looking at how can I break my norm, and we've got temperance here. I love this temperance card because there's so much action going on in this card. There's so much action. There's a stream back here that's quite a moving stream. It looks like a stream after a heavy rain. It's very, very fast. We've got the stream plants that are growing up. We've got all of these dragonflies flying around. And then we've got the hands of the woman in the temperance card, and she's pouring water between 2 cups back and forth, right? Because that's how you temper. We temper things, chocolate and things like that is back and forth, heat and cold, or she's mixing, she's tempering here. So this rhythmic slish, 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 however she's doing it, it's a very mindful, rhythmic sort of thing to go with the rhythm of the bubbling water, even the buzz of the dragonflies. We've got kind of this mindfulness in the middle of all this rhythmic action. we've got this stillness. And that really is a lot of how internal mindfulness works, doesn't it? It's right. Oh gosh, the John Kabat-Zinn book. My husband was totally obsessed with that book about 10 or maybe more, 15 years ago. Full Catastrophe Living. Yeah. And that's what it reminds me of. Her stillness here. Let's look at our card. What did we get? Awakening. Well, we've got, boy, a lot of similar flowy sort of feel going into that. So this is a Robinia. I'm not familiar with that kind of tree, Robinia. Looks like it has flowers. It says Robinia pseudo-acacia. Okay, so I guess it looks like an acacia, but it isn't. Awakening. Disengaging can happen when overtaken by external obsession and allurement. What are you excessively focusing on right now? Take action and help clear away mental and emotional clutter. Awakening. All this, that does fit, right? With all the chaos going on around here and her being still in the middle of it. Because she's very focused on what she's doing. She's got something to do. It's a job to do here. So perhaps we're breaking our norm by awakening to the job in that it is external, and the calm to do the job is in the internal. So what we have is chaos and yucky feelings and things, but they're not happening inside her, they're happening outside of her. And what's happening inside of her is calm. It's very rooted. So that's breaking my norm. You know, breaking our norm might be something as much as stop internalizing chaotic or upset or sort of disaster, oh no, sky is falling, that kind of feeling that we're feeling. A way to make this external action and not internal. Or also a way to seek out some serious balance for ourselves as well, I think. Okay, that's interesting. Just going to put that there. So that was the second question. How can I break my norm? So for his third principle, he calls it love with abandon. And by that he means loving with abandon by kindness and compassion. Yes, but also about gratitude. To remind ourselves about how many things that people have actually done in our lives. So this is question 3 about how we can love with abandon. Because even from the time, perhaps, you know, you were a small child and growing up to whatever point we are now, wherever you are right now when you're watching this, if you're watching this on a bus, think of all the people who had to show up so that that bus could be there when we needed it. If you're watching it in your home or in a coffee shop, somebody had to create all those things, even if the only thing you're doing is using electricity of some kind. Someone had to show up today so that you could have Wi-Fi, right? Somebody had to do that for us. That means we're surrounded by potentially a lot more people than we realize, and we get a lot more support than we necessarily realize. If you're just in a vehicle and someone else is driving, your life is in that person's hands. And the practice of mentally paying attention so that we can be grateful for those times when we feel like we have no trust left and we realize, oh, you know what? I just had, you know, surgery done on something, or I've just traveled in a vehicle that someone else was driving, or I've just used water that someone else is testing and electricity that someone else has made sure, lots of other people have made sure is in my world. We're actually surrounded by a lot more support than we may feel like we are. So how do we love with abandon? A lot of it is rooted in not forgetting all the things that actually happen for us for the good every single day. So that's kind of an interesting take for me on how to love with abandon, because it kind of isn't what we would do. It's not telling you, okay, well, go out and look for something to be thankful for. It's saying just stop right where you are and notice how you couldn't even be here if all these things didn't happen. All this good care, very good care, and attention to detail and duty and pride in their work had to have happened first in order for us to be where we are. Doesn't that make you feel better? Makes me feel a little bit better. And let's see. So love with abandon. So the question is going to be for us is, how can we love with abandon? And what do we need to know about how we can love with abandon? All right. So the Page of Cups. Oh, this is such a beautiful card. The Page of Cups. How can we love with abandon? Well, I mean, look at her. She's just so shyly offering what she has in this cup. This reminds me a little bit of the proverb about the poor woman's mite. And there was a poor widow woman who had just the last little coin or amount of money that she had, and she brought it to give to someone who needed it more than she does. And she brought it in her hands, you know, just because it was the most precious thing, because it was all she had left. And it was that simple little offering. She was giving all she had. And there was such a regal kind of beauty in offering your last thing. And here, this makes me think of it. She's just offering this beautiful little cup, hesitantly, delicately, loving with abandon. It looks very restrained, but yet she's bringing all she has. She's bringing all she has. And we got alder. I love this. This is one of my favorite cards. I actually get this quite a lot. Because do you see the llama? The face in the tree that looks like a llama, like a happy llama, with his heart chakra all glowing and happy. Isn't that a beautiful card? You are enough. Alder, the alder. Concerns related to emotions around power, identity, or creativity can create excess stress within your body. How can you release some stress and restore a sense of balance? You are enough. That's perfect. This little cup, what we're giving, that's enough. How can we love with abandon, love with what we have, even if it's a tiny little bit? There's an old song. I'm trying to remember who sings it. But one of the lines in the song is, she's a girl who holds the world in a paper cup. And I always have loved that because it always felt like who I was as a person. And it makes me think of this with this just little small offering. This is her whole world. That's what she's got, and that's what she's offering. That's really beautiful, how we love with abandon. You know, we're good enough, and our gift is good enough. Just love. You know what? That doesn't feel like abandon, does it? But isn't it a wild concept? You're enough, give what you have, and that is enough. It's revolutionary. It really is. That is revolutionary, people. That you're enough, that I'm enough. Yep. Alrighty, so the fourth principle that Phillips lays out in the article, and there's a swearing, and then I'm going to change the word so you only hear the swearing one time. I do swear. I try not to swear on my channel. I'm not afraid of swearing. I just, that's it. That's just the way I like my channel to be. So, but the fourth principle is own your shit. So in the article, he talks about taking a group of Buddhists, going with a group of other Buddhists to Bhutan. Bhutan is a country that's nestled between China and India. It's a Buddhist kingdom. It has a long tradition of something that they call crazy wisdom. Crazy wisdom, so it's kind of like unconventional expressions of enlightened behavior. The man who's associated with this tradition in Bhutan is a man named Drugpa. And in the 15th century, he spread some Buddhist teachings around Bhutan. And the interesting thing about him, he was a lush, and he was lecherous. So there are then like these large-scale depictions of phalluses all over Bhutan. You may have probably seen this before. They're painted kind of on houses. They're in the doorway, in the threshold of your door, to kind of protect from, you know, bad energy or bad vibes or whatever. When the author Phillips was in Bhutan on this tour, they met with some dignitaries from Bhutan, and someone in the group said, "Can you tell me more about the tradition of crazy wisdom? What does crazy wisdom mean to the people of Bhutan?" And the dignitary said, "Do you want to know what it means? It means cut the crap." And so he's talking about cutting through our own ego, cutting through our own hypocrisy, cutting through our own self-indulgence, cutting through all that mental noise, all the confusion and all the storylines that we're trying to keep in our head that we can't make sense of right now. And all of these things amplify all of the drama that's going on in the outer world, and then our inner world amplifies the drama from the outer world. And owning our own stuff, showing up where we are needed, not magnifying the drama, but magnifying the voices. And he also gives the example that I think probably most people saw a couple of years ago, and it was at Standing Rock when the pipeline was being protested. I believe it's still being protested. I'm not saying it isn't, but it was a big topic in the news. And a man named Wesley Clark Jr., who is a former Army veteran, and he's the son of Wesley Clark Sr., who is a big, famous general in the United States. He's a general of the Army, and he was the head of, I think, Central Command, NATO, something like. Oh no, he was the former Supreme Commander. He was the former Supreme Commander of NATO. Supreme Commander. Do we really need titles like that? Anyway, and his son Wesley Clark Jr. went to Standing Rock, went to the elder in the Lakota tribe to specifically apologize on behalf of the U.S. Army, because the U.S. Army has, we know, historically done a great deal of damage to Native people, particularly here, Native American people. And it took 500 years to get to that moment, 500 years of persecution. The persecution hasn't stopped, but Wes Clark Jr. owned the shit. He owned the stuff, and not just for him personally, for the whole country, in the name of everyone, but also specifically as the son of, the Supreme Commander from the Army. That was a really appropriate thing to do. He owned it. And, part of that might mean that we need to reveal it in our own mind, lay it open. Once we reveal it and we see it, we need to make sure we feel regret. We allow ourselves to feel regret. Like, don't try to shove that guilt away. Keep feeling the guilt as long as we need to feel it. Because that allows us to reconnect with the part of us that we know can do better than the thing that we did when we were feeling guilty, that we're feeling guilty about now. Like, the part of me that did that thing that's making me feel guilty, I need to be able to get in touch with that and get in touch with a part of me that is going to make a better choice next time, and that knows better, and that cares more, and that can understand, and can have compassion for me as well as for everyone else. So it's about committing to a different course of actions. And let's draw a card for that. So how can we own our stuff? This is number 4, own your stuff. Oh, Aces. See, isn't this a good deck? This was a great deck to choose. Let's see if I can get the focus better. I think that's a little better. Ace of Pentacles. So how do we own our stuff? Well, it starts small, doesn't it? We start at the ground up, don't we? We start at the roots. We start, look at this, it's like a tree behind him, but this definitely, I see a lemniscate, but it reminds me of DNA, strands of DNA. So like, it's in us, we can do it. It's in us, we've got it, we can do it. But it's starting small and start from the ground and start in practical ways. That's how we own it. Just a small thing. Let's see. Opportunity. Eucalyptus. Opportunity can show up at the unlikeliest of times. Your energy is flowing and running smoothly. What steps can you take to facilitate the opportunity? How can you expose yourself to more opportunities in life? I was just looking at this. See, it's like there's a tree here, and it's like the top of the tree. So it's almost like when you plant a seed, or, you plant a little acorn or whatever, and then it grows. But we have to plant that first in order for it to grow. So how do we own our stuff? Maybe just own it one thing at a time, small things at a time. Maybe the down in the dirt things, feet on the ground things. Own it and let that be an opportunity for us to kind of rise above that stuff and to be that better person, the better angels of our nature. See, the heart chakra is really going green there with love. Cool. How we own our shit. Okay, stuff. Sorry. The 5th question, the 5th principle that Phillips is talking about in this article is fear no one. And he is specifically talking about things like haves and have-nots, high status people, low status people, rich people, privileged people, underprivileged people. And that's specifically what we're actually talking about. These things cause us to be afraid of the other person. It makes a lot of othering, whether we are afraid of rich and powerful people, or whether you are a rich and powerful person who's afraid of the uprising of the angry mob, the little people. Is not really a mob. We're just a gathering of people. But, rabbit trails. So sorry. So fearing nobody means getting to know ourselves and to start to consider the possibility of equality. And equality doesn't mean that you can't stand out for who you are. You know, like if you're really smart or you're really beautiful, you're really talented, that you don't have to stop doing those things. That's not what equality is. Equality is we can still be all of our gifts and our talents. It just means that everybody else has gifts and talents, not just us. And we recognize other people's gifts and talents as much as we recognize our own. And it also means not to be intimidated, not by spiritual teachers or politicians or people talking on television or anyone who's bigger than you or angrier than you or can shout louder than you. You know, fear no one. This is a big one for me personally, just because I've had a background of fearing the things that big people do. And so one of the things I think I'm really going to dig into is this number 5, fearing no one. He talks about not being intimidated, that we are just like him. We are just like everybody. We are immersed in the process of ripening and maturing our own potential. We are ripening spiritually. We're ripening emotionally. We're ripening intellectually. We're ripening in our capacities to cause change or to lead people. There isn't anybody we need to fear because we are just as valuable. You are just as valuable, and I am just as valuable. Just because somebody is standing in the spotlight, just because someone has all the money and the power, doesn't mean they're superior to you. It doesn't mean they're superior to you. Isn't that an interesting concept? So how can I... So this was weird because the phrasing is fear no one. And at first I came up with... you know, how do I fear no one? How to fear? What do I need to know about fearing no one? How to fear no one? And then I decided to kind of just turn the questioning a little and say, how can I stand in fearlessness? So when I'm going for with the fear no one, making it a question, how can I stand in fearlessness? Okay, does that make sense? This is going to be a learning process. Okay, so number 5, fear no one. Aw. Wow, another major arcana. You've got majors, court card, an ace, and another major. So this is life renewed. It would be the judgment card. Look what she's holding, you guys. Look, she's holding an acorn. There's the acorn. The acorn is a symbol of a woman. You've probably heard of her. She's known as Mother Julian. Or Saint Julian of Norwich in England, Norwich, and it's Julian, Julian. So if you wanted to look anything up on her, she was a Christian. She's, I guess, considered a Christian mystic, and so she lived in, I want to say, the 1300s or the 1400s, somewhere around there, and she was an anchoress, and an anchoress is a special kind of nun where they wall you up inside the actual walls of the church. So you are entombed in the church while you're still alive. And she would be in this little tiny room, and she had things handed to her through a little opening, a little window, and that's where she lived. She was the anchoress because she was like the anchor of the church. It's like the soul of the church is sort of walled up inside the church in a very human, you know, in a way that's shown not like with a statue, but with an actual human being inside the walls of the church. And so she's really fascinating. She was a Christian mystic, and I was on a big reading binge. I tend to go on reading binges. Like I'll read on all one subject and then another one, and I go back and revisit. But I was on a reading binge probably, I don't know, gosh, maybe around 2000. And I was reading a lot of the books about Julian of Norwich, and then things that people have written and that she has written and some of her writings and things like that. And I carried around a little acorn in my pocket because the acorn is a symbol of Mother Julian, because it's very small, but it does all these incredibly great things, and it grows very big. And I had a little tiny acorn that I carried around in my pocket for many, many years to just remind me. One of the sayings, you've probably heard this saying before, that's attributed to Mother Julian is, all shall be well, and all shall be well, and all manner of things shall be well. It's also one of my favorite hymns. It's a hymn as well. And that reminds me of that, all shall be well. The question we were asking is how to step into fearlessness, because everything is actually okay. Because all can be well. Doesn't mean it's okay now, but it can be okay. That reminds me of that saying where it'll all work out in the end. If it isn't working out, then maybe it's not the end. I've heard that. It's a little trite, you know, it's a little, I don't know. Let's see what we've got. Independence. What is this? A Douglas fir. Well, wouldn't it have been fun if that was an oak tree? So we've got this beautiful Douglas fir. Look at all the heart chakra love we've been getting in this reading. Douglas fir, independence. You can find the energy and freedom you need to be yourself and still find your place as part of a whole. Speak your truth from your heart with the awareness that you deserve love. This leads to a more wholesome connectedness rather than feeling separate in some way. So this is all we have. It's very similar to this. We're coming with our little offerings, what we've got, and we use what we have, and we're okay with that. You know, look how fearless she is in this. This might be one I come back to a little bit as well, looking at fearlessness. I just noticed the background music was off. I'm not sure how long it was off for. Okay, so 6 is the 6th principle that Phillips talks about in What to Do When We Don't Know What to Do Next. The article, What to Do When We Don't Know What to Do Next, is 6 is dance in the fire. And he takes us in the article through an exercise of emotions. And I'll kind of walk you through it if you want to. So yeah, do it along with me if you want to. So the first thing that he has you do is kind of identifying, he has us identifying emotions. And the first he wants us to do is connect with the emotion of sadness. So think of a time when we were really disappointed. So sad. Something someone did, they broke your heart. And you were sad. And he says, so let's think of that for a moment. When did somebody disappoint you or hurt you? Let the emotion rise up of that experience, that hurt. And just kind of let it inhabit your body right now. So allow yourself to kind of feel it. Feel that sadness. Think of that experience and feel it. So now, if you're feeling it, take a notice of your posture. Where in the body is something happening? Is your head slumped? Are your shoulders hunched over? Does your belly hurt? Is your chest tight? Or is your throat tight? To notice, kind of notice where we're feeling all that sadness from this emotion that we're letting bubble up right now. So now, what he wants us to do now is remember a moment when something went exactly your way. You experienced a success. You experienced a personal triumph. Remember how proud everybody was of you then? Do you remember how proud you were of yourself then? Do you remember that? That was amazing. That was so amazing. Do you remember that? When you were the hero of the story, when you solved that thing, when you did that thing, when you won it, do you remember that feeling? You experienced success? Let that emotion come in. Feel it. Sit in it. Feel it. Feel it. Pay attention to your body. Let your posture show how you feel. I bet your back's straight. I bet your head's up a little higher. I bet your shoulders are back. You know, with the chest out in that sort of, yeah, I did great. So we've got that feeling. Now let's, he says, if you can, let's change our mind again. And let's think about when you fell in love, maybe for the first time, or when you felt love in a really, really strong way. Might have been with another person. It might have been in an adult, romantic relationship. It could have been a friend. It could be a little child. When you held a particular little child for the first time and felt love, maybe overwhelming love, or your pet. When you picked your pet out and you saw that dog right there at the shelter and you knew that's it, that's my dog, and you're filled up with that feeling of unconditional love, overwhelming love and happiness and connection. And he says, just let that feeling of love arise. And let it transpire and notice what your body feels like and what her body is positioned like. And then the next thing he wants you to do is look at joy and try to let pure joy arise within you. What does total joy feel like? What does joy want you to do? What does joy want to do through you? What is the message that joy has? Think about the most joyous place you are, like running through a field with your arms out singing. Sound of Music song. What's joy? Feel that. Okay. So now we felt a whole bunch of emotions. And he says all of these feelings and emotions carry a lot of intensity. And right, because they talk about emotions being contagious. And then they talk about like intense emotions, extreme emotions are extremely contagious. So emotions carry a lot of intensity and a lot of energy. And that is bringing us to the sixth principle, dance in the fire. And we were talking about an awareness of mind that is constantly liberating emotions and experiences, so that in the middle of it you can realize that we're not actually trapped in that emotion. And we just illustrated this through those exercises that he just took us through. That we just illustrated that we can actually switch emotions quickly if we give ourselves permission to do it. Did you get that? You just discovered, and I just discovered, that we can actually switch emotions quickly if we give ourselves permission to do it. And what does that mean? It means it can take a shift in our thoughts, a shift in our attitude, a shift in our focus, a shift in our experience. That's a lot of power in our grasp. And the shifts change things and they free us. So then we can be looking at, like, what do we do with that freedom? How do we use it? What do we aim for? We've got all this freedom we didn't know we had. So the sixth question is about dancing in the fire. How can we dance in the fire? Again, that reminds me of the Full Catastrophe Living book that I was talking about a little bit earlier. Because we can't wait until everything's perfect. We have to be able to live in the middle of catastrophe. Sorry, just cut a sneeze out there. So let's look at question number 6. How can I dance in the fire? Ace of Swords. These are really great readings. I hope you're all enjoying them as much as I am. Look at this beautiful heron. Isn't it beautiful? Herons are some of my favorite birds. When I was a wee little girl, I had I think it was one of my first cognitively mystical experiences where I knew I was having an experience. And I was a little girl all by myself at a lake, kind of a pond, and it was sort of at dusk. And there was some fog that was starting to roll in, and an enormous blue heron just flew up out of the trees by the swampy edge of the lake where it had been. I hadn't seen it before. Excuse me. And it flew up, and then it just flew toward me. And I was standing on the kind of the shore, up on the shore of the lake, up, back on grass and things. And it came flying right towards me. And I saw it in mid-flight, flying over, kind of skimming over the top of that lake. And I thought, I was probably 9 or 10. I don't think I was very old. This is a mystical experience, I remember thinking at the time. And it was with the blue heron, and I've thought about that ever since, as it flew right at me, and then it flew over my head, and then it flew away. Ace of Swords. How can I dance in the fire? And I wanted to peek at the guidebook, Tarot of the Hidden Realms guidebook, quickly. Because this is a very, very excellent guidebook. In fact, even if you don't have the deck and you just wanted to pick up the guidebook used for a couple of dollars, on Amazon, it's definitely worth having. And there's always something insightful. And I've even used this guidebook before. I use it frequently with other decks. One of the things the guidebook tells us is that discerning the truth isn't always easy. But this card lets you know that the truth is within your grasp. So how can I dance in the fire? It's within our grasp. Let's see. Resourcefulness. And this is a Laurel. When your attention is fragmented, you find yourself moving from one thought to another, making it difficult to hold a clear vision of a plan of action. Take some time to allow your true intentions to become clearer. Hold the vision of what you want and set your priorities from there. Create small steps for your goal. So once again, we're back to the idea of we're going to start small in all of this. We're going to start small first with thoughts, with our ability to change our thoughts, which is what we learned in that experience we just did. We can change. We can pick a new thought. We can utilize our own personal resourcefulness so that we can do that. How do we dance in the fire? We take that new baby thought. We take all of our resourcefulness, our resiliency, and we dance in the fire with that, the hope and the possibility that everything is within our reach, that we can do it. So the seventh principle that Phillips gives is called invest trust. And he says, we usually like to think about trust as like something that needs to be earned. I don't trust anybody. You have to earn my trust. I've said that before. I do think of it that way. Not only does the world have to earn your trust, but other people have to earn your trust. But the people and the world, they're always changing. They're complex. They're uncertain. And therefore, what does that mean? That means our trust stays small. It means my trust stays small. Not everybody can be completely trustworthy. There's always a chance that we might have to hold something back, that we might have to keep something back because someone can hurt us, because we are all ultimately extremely vulnerable. So Phillips goes on to say that we can wait and we can say, well, maybe one day when everything's under control, I'm going to trust then. Or we can try to predict what everybody else will do and say, when I know what everybody else is going to do and when they're more predictable, then I will trust them. When I have more control over other people, then I'll trust them. It's good for us to trust. You know, trust makes us open. It makes us calm. It makes us relatable, peaceful, happy. And all of those qualities in us will inspire somebody else to invest trust in us. So it makes us, when we trust, it makes us a better person. But it's difficult to trust when so much is resting on whether that other person is trustworthy or not. And people are so flawed, aren't they? We're all so flawed. I'm not talking about bad people who hurt you, or toxic people, or dangerous people. I'm just talking about those of us who aren't those things. We're still very flawed, and we're still difficult to trust. People don't want to trust you even if you're very nice, because we're protective, right? So he says what we should do is flip the idea on the head and choose to invest in trust instead, because you can. That's what he says. We can invest in trust simply because we can. We can invest it because we can. So we don't have to wait for the world to become safer. We don't have to wait for other people to become more predictable. Walk forward in the trust because it's the right thing for us and it's the right thing for the world, and because it is very, very good for us. What keeps us from investing greater trust is what he calls in this article the what if red flag. So whenever you think what if, we usually say some kind of disempowering thing. What if it all goes wrong? What if I lose my job? What if this relationship doesn't work out? What if I try this and it fails? What if my health doesn't get better? What if I make a fool of myself? And on and on. And he says what we're not realizing is that anything and everything that we add after what if is imagination. And if it's our imagination, that means we could change it. It means we have a choice. So we say, what if this imaginary thing happens? What if that imaginary thing happens? And of course, I tell myself it's not imaginary. It's statistically possible because I've looked at it and I know people this has happened to, or this has happened to me and I'm afraid of it happening again. There's a lot of reasonable arguments that I put forth for not investing trust. But maybe it's important for us to look at those arguments, or maybe put them aside and say, well, what if we trust? I mean, if we invest in trust, we could always go back to not trusting, right? But we won't know because we didn't try. From now on, every time that you hear or think the words what if, he says, I want you to imagine a large, strong-willed Viking woman waving a huge red flag. So what I imagined was an opera singer dressed like a Viking. You know, you've seen that, the opera singer kind of trope, dressed like a Viking with the horn helmet on her head. And he says, this is what she's saying. Stop, my dear. You have a choice here. She'd probably sing that, though. The choice is that you can imagine something different, you know? Like, well, what if it is okay? What if it works out? Yeah, but what if it's fine? What if we do have enough money? What if we can do it and we have fun? What if we actually do have enough time? What if we actually are healthy enough to do something? What if people actually do like you? Would that be so bad? You know, what if you can turn the ship around? The fact that we're still here, that we're still able to, you know, be here, filming videos, watching videos, reading articles on the internet, that's proof that for most of our life, if not for all of our life, we were able to get what we needed to survive. We were able to get what we needed to survive. No matter how bad it was, we survived. Why should we continue to live in fear when we can ingest trust? When we can invest in trust, choose to be the person who isn't waiting around for other people to be predictable or waiting around for the world to change. Choose to be the one that invests trust again and again and again and again because it's good for us. How can we invest? Sorry for bumping again. How can we invest trust? Number 7. Okay. And we've got 2 of Wands. What a joyful card. Look, she's hopping from flower to flower because she knows she can. She knows she can land on that leaf and it will catch her. London Plain. Fine judgment. I've received this card before as well. When prone to introspection, melancholy, or overanalysis, you can be left with a biased viewpoint. Take a broader viewpoint to discern the subtle levels of truth. An activity such as meditation may help you develop that skill. How can I invest trust? Well, you know, this is a 2. 2 of Wands. This is a 2. 2s always involve some kind of a choice. So, do we have another 2 yet? No. All right, so this is our 2 card so far. And this is about making a choice. How can we invest? We're going to invest by choosing what we're going to do. We're going to choose this 2 of Wands. We're going to choose to trust. And you know what? Fine judgment actually makes me think of, let me see if I can find it. Here's my book. So I've talked before about, I'm always talking about Rudolf Steiner and stuff like that. So this is one of my favorite books. It's a, I don't know how old it is. I want to say maybe 15 years old, something like that. Start Now, a book of soul and spiritual exercises. You can see that I put all of my Virgo-ness to good use because I have marked some of the different exercises that I want to be able to get to quickly. And this actually, fine judgment, reminds me of one of the exercises that is in here. It's not here. No, it's the week. Okay. So these are exercises that Steiner gave to people in a lecture. In lectures, he talked about these things. Oh, there maybe talked about in one of the books too. Most of the books that we have, like this says Rudolf Steiner. This isn't written by Rudolf Steiner. Somebody edited it and put it together, to Christopher Bamford. And these are just bits and pieces from Steiner's different lectures, or perhaps there may be some things from his writings in here. And so they're put together. And of course, they were done in German originally. He was Austrian, lived in Switzerland, and so he spoke German. And these are the exercises for the days of the week. This is sort of loosely cribbed from the, right here. Yeah, the Eightfold Path of Buddhism, the Noble Eightfold Path. So it's kind of cribbed from that. But on Sunday, one of the things that we exercise is right judgment. So it's about deciding on even the most significant issues after full, well-rounded, well-founded deliberation and reflection. All unthinking behavior and all meaningless actions should be discarded from the soul. Our reason for doing everything we do should be fully deliberated. And this is, at least, this is the activity that we practice on this Sunday if I'm going through the exercises for the days of the week. So every Sunday would be about right judgment. And once we're convinced that a decision is correct, we should adhere to it with inner steadfastness, and this is right judgment, because it was made independently of attraction or aversion. And Steiner actually does talk about attraction and aversion, like sympathy and antipathy, which means something you're naturally drawn to as opposed to something that you're naturally, like, repelled by. So instead of using, I'm repelled by this, or, ooh, yeah, this is my thing, I'll do that, it talks about using right judgment. What was this? Here we go. So this is about using fine, refining our judgment to be finer, or writing it so that it is right, we're writing the course, straightening the course as we make a decision. And it might be making a decision to deliberately look a particular way and focus on a particular place to invest our trust. Because fine judgment is a very big, strong tree. If you wanted to climb a tree, that looks like a good tree to climb. It would hold your weight. So fine judgment is probably a good thing to rest a bit on as we invest, because it was probably a good investment. That's just kind of what I'm thinking with that. This is just quick, and there are probably a lot more things that we could take away from these cards for ourselves. So the eighth and final principle that he puts forward in this article is to stand on truth. Standing on truth is about standing up for the truth, or standing in the truth. And what he talks about is something that he calls timeless truths. And he describes these things as golden mountains. So timeless truth is a golden mountain. And here's how this works. We all have opinions. Opinions are really hard, and they're heavy to carry. They're hard because you have to argue them and defend them. You have to first argue and defend in your own mind, right? With your own inner critics and things like that, arguing against yourself in your own mind. And once you've convinced yourself, you have to carry these around, and you have to defend your arguments and defend your opinions to other people, sometimes even in light of contradictory information. So opinions are really a heavy burden to bear. They're a heavy load to carry, right? And then there are golden mountains. And Phillips says to him, golden mountains are universal truths. They don't need you to carry them because they're a mountain, right? They're there. There it is. They're there. You don't have to show anyone. Everybody can see it, and everybody knows it's there, and you don't have to carry it, and you certainly don't have to defend the mountain. And golden mountains, if you talk about them, you'll talk about something like, say, the golden rule, right? Do unto others as you would have them do unto you. There's a reason that that is present in so many different societies, cultures, religions, because it's a universal truth, right? It's a golden mountain. It's the kind of thing that when you say it, everyone says, yes, yes, that's true. That's true, because that feels true to everybody. And one of the things that Phillips mentions in this is that we all have very finely developed bullshit detectors inside of us, right? And our own personal bullshit detector is very sophisticated, and it's consistent if we let it work for us. Our bullshit detector will let us know what's true, what's not true, regardless of our opinions or other people's opinions. And so standing in the truth is about cultivating that inner knowledge and that inner trust, and relying on that, relying on truth. So for our 8th and final card, let's look at how can we stand on truth right now? Because that's the important thing I want to look at is now. What do we do now? It's useless to be like down the road, something's going to happen. How can I stand on truth right now? Because I don't know what to do now. That's the point of the spread. So I have to stand on truth now. How can I do that? Oh, wow. These were really amazing cards. Golly. So here we've got the Knight of Wands from the Tarot of the Hidden Realm. Interesting. Let's see what this Aspen Perspectives. Oh, that's beautiful. I don't even know if I've ever drawn this card before, maybe once from this deck. Look at the perspective. See, it's like we're laying on our back in the woods looking up. And you can see just a little bit of blue sky way up there. See? See if I can get it focused. Good. Perspectives. What does she tell us with perspectives? The author of this deck, in case I didn't say it, is Lisa McLaughlin Art. You can get it on Etsy. Just in case I didn't say that. One of my favorite oracle decks. Perspectives. Overanalyzing and taking things too seriously heightens your fear of things. Seek out connection and opportunities that help to calm your fear and bring about fresh perspectives. Delight in the moment through wise laughter. This reminds me of the quote, the Mr. Rogers quote, about looking for the helpers, which I think everybody knows now because it played so much after 9/11. It's about look for the helpers. You can look at the disaster. You can look at the people that are trying to do things right, trying to put things right. Look at the helpers. Seek out connections and opportunities that calm our fears and could bring a fresh perspective, as opposed to focusing on what's going wrong, focusing on the people that are making things go right. And can we tap into that? Can we be part of that? Here's what I find interesting about this card. Knight of Wands. So we've got this young fae man, and he's in the bushes. You can see he's sort of hiding, and you can tell he's sort of like stalking something, right? He's getting ready. He's hiding and he's poised. He's stalking his prey, whatever that is, and he's about to pounce. I've always liked this card because this looks like a young man who is my son's friend. They've been friends since childhood, and they used to fence. They were both fencing, not fence as in sell on stolen goods. Fence as in you have an épée. An épée is a kind of sword, and you have your full white fence gear with the big mesh helmet, and yeah, my son fenced épée, and my daughter, Grace, was also a fencer. And they became friends with this young man, and they've been friends their whole life. They're grown up now. And You know, they're in their 20s and they're grown-up men. But he looks just like this. My son's friend looks just like this. And he was a fencer. And he was really super talented, very, very good. One of the things, if you've seen fencing on television, you kind of see how sort of bouncy the fencers can be sort of at the beginning. They're usually stretching and moving and things like that. And then they get themselves set in the fencing, like the ready position. But you've noticed it, right? Because they're standing, if you've seen it on television or in real life, they have one foot in front of them, one foot behind them. Their knees are sort of bent in like a semi-squatting down, just a bit position. One arm, the non-fencing arm, is back behind them, bent at the elbow, and the other fencing arm is sort of ready to go. I think you can imagine that. So my son's friend, who this looks so much like, had such grace in fencing. It was like cat-like. It was feline. His movements were almost cat-like. He could spring out of a set position and spring back into it. So spring out, hit, you know, come back. Like boom, but just like a cat. So smooth and beautiful. And it reminds me of this, as this young man is standing like a cat, wound tight, ready to go. Ready to spring. How can I stand on truth? On tiptoes, ready to go. Ready to spring. And also, we might need to not, maybe, you know, we're sort of laying back in the grass looking up at the sky, standing on truth. That's a truth too. You know, we can stand on truth by being ready, and we can stand on it by changing our perspectives. We can do both of these things. So to conclude the article, the author says these are basically the 8 principles that he recommends for our time that can help you stay the course. And he says you can share them with your friends and colleagues and your family, children, whoever. And he reminds us that by practicing these 8 principles, we will be able to find ground in the groundlessness of today and find clear direction in the volatility and the uncertainty that's happening right now in the world by tending to the one thing that we can control, which is our own practices. I thought this was really neat. Let me just clean this up and I'll talk to you a little bit more about, I'll give you a rundown of all the questions, again, in case you missed it. And then I will talk about some potential jumping off ideas for this particular spread and for this kind of investigative work, doing, you know, inner work. So 1 second, let me clean up. Okay, so one more time with the questions. The 8 questions that we talked about today are: 1, how can I serve the light? 2, how can I break my norm? How can I break my norm? 3, how can I love with abundance? How can I love with abundance? 4, how can I own my own stuff? How can I own my own stuff? 5, how can I step into fearlessness? How can I be fearless? That was the question about fear. That was the paragraph about fearing no one, the principle that we turned into a question. So how can I step into fearlessness? 6, how can I dance in the fire? How can I dance in the fire? 7, how can I invest trust? How can I invest trust? And 8, how can I stand on truth? That's for today, right now. How can I stand on truth? And for my reading, I used tarot and oracle, but you could certainly use just tarot deck for the whole thing, or just an oracle deck for the whole thing. In fact, I was thinking about some decks that are kind of gentle and wise, and decks that kind of have a wider view, a long time sort of historical perspective with a wide view and things like that. Because a lot of times, for me personally, tapping into that sort of energy that's much bigger than here and now. And I mean, we could argue that, you know, a lot of decks do that, but there are some decks that are, in particular, I feel, tap into a little bit more ancient or old archetypal energy than others do. Rumi Oracle is one of them. The book is quite meaty, and there's a Rumi poem with each entry. and then quite a bit of writing from Alana Fairchild, and there's usually some kind of a little ritual or something else. And so I could easily see a situation where you just drew an oracle card for each of these. So this is let love transform. How can I serve the light? Let love transform. Then opening up the guidebook, looking at it, working with some of the exercises, journaling about letting love transform and allowing that to be kind of singly more focused. So maybe not in a spread, but maybe doing this just on one day. And then doing the next question on another day, and the next question on another day, and following along that. There would also be ways, if you wanted to work in an extended way with these 12 principles that he puts forward in this article, what you could potentially do is pull separate decks. Like I was thinking, imagining 8 separate decks. So one deck for how can I serve the light, for instance, and that might be, what have I got? So that might be like the Star Child Akashic Tarot. So this is what I might choose to work with for the first principle, how can I serve the light? And then I might even do something like where I draw 3 cards. Let's say I'm going to do a tarot deck just for this one particular card, how can I serve the light? This is a very light card. It would be very good. And I could do something like stop, start, advice. Right? So how can I serve the light? Stop, start, advice. Let's get this in the shot for you. I'm sorry, I think the angle of the camera changed slightly. I ran out of battery room and I had to take the camera down and offload the video into my laptop and then come back. So if it's suddenly looks very different, I do apologize. So let's suppose we were just using the Star Child Tarot for the first question, how can I serve the light? And I could choose to say, you know, what do I need to stop doing in order to serve the light? I need to stop maybe being alone, maybe being in the dark, or waiting for a guiding star when I've got this big star up here. She's down here waiting for something. So maybe stop waiting for something. Start 3 of Cups, get together with people. Maybe it's time to combine my resources, get together, join a group, and that kind of a thing. Pulling resources. So that would be stop, that would be start. This would be advice. The Magician. Aha, look. If we've got her here, there she is in the star all by herself, right? Looking for an outlet. She picks up her tools and now she's ready to go. So advice is perhaps serving the light is a little bit more about changing what I'm currently doing. Less being alone, more joining with other people so that we can really use the tools in kind of the most efficient, professional, and skilled way possible. So that would be an example. So that, say that was one day and I just wanted to meditate on that or whatever. I could use another deck on another day for something else. Like this is Oracle of Echoes, and it's an oracle deck by Anna Torian. I also got this on Etsy. It's one of my favorite oracle decks. It's really amazing. So if we just took 3 cards from, what's the next question? How can I break my norm? And let's say I'm going to do within, without, and advice. Instead, this was stop, start, advice. I could do another 3 card within, without, advice. Let's say that. So this is, how can I break my norm? Within, I might need to just mourn my losses. You know, looks like I maybe need to cut my losses, mourn my losses, cry, ugly crying, ugly tears, be sad internally. Without, continue to project hope, looking for that light. So I'm projecting hope out here. This is interesting too, because look how they're playing off one another. So this is about my external is hope and light to the world, you know, out there to other people, putting that out there. Maybe this is happening inside, but I could put this out outside. I could choose to do that. And then advice, look, breakthrough. So we've got the woman diving through all of this ice, crashing through here. That's what brings brings the breakthrough. You know, it could even look like she's crashing through this, if this is frozen, a kind of wasteland of loss, kind of frozen, icy, and she's cracking through with her body to bring a big breakthrough because we're holding on to hope. So that could be a way that you use just, you know, one deck for this deck for one question, this deck for another question, and even spreading it out so that you've got loads of cards going everywhere. I mean, I don't see why someone couldn't use, I have a, let me see what I've got right here. So the Lavish Earth deck, which shows crystals, different kinds of crystals, and it has quotes with things about them. Why couldn't I draw a card for what is the crystal energy that I need most in order to love with abandon? Citrine. It actually helps us to connect with the part of us that relishes learning new things and taking on new ventures and assignments and doing so with gusto. So citrine would help to embrace that sort of abandon feel, that doing something with gusto, doing something with abandon. So we could certainly draw crystal cards for what crystal energy is going to give us. How can I serve the light? What crystal best supports that? How can I break my norm? What crystal kind of gives me the best help or the best focus in that? How can I love with abandon? How can I own my own stuff? And then actually working with crystals or just working with the energy. And I'm sure we could do the same thing with animals. What sort of animal wisdom or animal energy could I tap into in order to embrace these 8 principles and start kind of making it more here and more powerful and more helpful in my life? So yeah, those are some ways that I envisioned jumping off and then doing a deep dive into any of these questions. So I hope you enjoyed that. I hope you enjoyed it, and I hope if you try it, you'll please let me know. Feel free if anyone wants to do a video response or whatever. And so if you do have any questions or comments, I would love if you would leave them below. If you do try this, I would love if you would let me know. If you just enjoyed sitting and watching the reading and the drawing and everything else, which is sometimes really relaxing and very comforting and makes me feel better. You know, I think sometimes that can just make us feel better. Sometimes just kind of watching and sitting in that energy of a big circle that I drew, you know, for all of us kind of to sit in and ponder things and process things and think about things. And so if you were able to do that, I'm very glad also. And that's it for now. I plan to be back soon with a few more videos. I hope you enjoyed this, and take care. Thank you so much for watching. Bye.